Okay, we can do this. I know we can do this. This is the mop-up for June 21st, 2024. I'm David Feldman in New York. Thank you so much for finding me. If you would like a transcript of today's episode or previous episodes, go to shopdavidfeldman.com and hit the transcripts menu. These transcripts are free, thanks to my listeners who have bought garbage like this Trump fart filtration mask. Here it is. And this Harvard mug where Harvard is misspelled, Harverd. The Trump Scream mug, I like this particularly. And the David Ferdman show, where am I? David Ferdman, go to Shop David, and we have some freebies. We have a Harvard diploma, and I'm got a new line of coffee mugshots. This is my get-rich-quick scheme. It's a coffee mug with a mugshot. It's Rudy. It's like something Kramer would invent on Seinfeld. It's a coffee mug with a mugshot. It's Rudy Giuliani's mugshot on a coffee mug. And if I sell any, I'll put Trump's mugshot on a coffee mug as well. Take a look at this, huh? I'm really proud of this. It's a coffee mugshot, huh? This is making me ill. This is not what I should be doing. Back in 2019, Donald Trump phoned the new president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, and congratulated him on his recent election victory. During what Trump described as a perfect call, Trump said a tranche of congressionally approved weapons were heading to Ukraine. But Trump said, first, I need you, Volodymyr Zelensky, to perform a favor. I need you to dig up dirt on Joe Biden, Trump's likely opponent in the upcoming 2020 presidential election. This, of course, led to the first of Donald Trump's two impeachments. Lieutenant Colonel Eugene Vindman, then a lieutenant colonel in the Army, was serving as legal advisor to the National Security Council. He was told about Trump's phone call by his twin brother, also a lieutenant colonel, one of the NSC's leading experts on Ukraine, who was assigned to that phone call between Trump and Zelensky. Lieutenant Colonel Eugene Vindman then reported Trump's illegal request to White House lawyers, advising them that Trump had probably violated several laws, including the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. This led to Trump's first impeachment, during which Trump fired Eugene Vindman's brother after he became a witness for the prosecution. On Tuesday, retired Lieutenant Colonel Eugene Vindman won the Democratic Party's nomination for Virginia's 7th Congressional District. It's currently held by Abigail Spanberger, a former CIA officer who stepped down in order to run for governor of Virginia next year. This district is in the suburbs of Washington, D.C., and swings back and forth. Democrat Abigail Spanberger was reelected in 2022, according to the New York Times, by a 4.6 percentage. But a year earlier, Republican hedge fund manager Glenn Youngkin, in his successful race for governor, won that same district by nearly 5 percentage points. Votes are still being counted after Tuesday's Virginia primary, where it looks like the head of the ultra-far-right Freedom Caucus, Republican Congressman Bob Good, may be going down to defeat in his race for Virginia's 5th congressional district. Earlier this year, Good became Donald Trump's enemy by endorsing Ron DeSantis for president. Good also antagonized former Speaker Kevin McCarthy back in October after joining 7 other House Republicans in voting for McCarthy's removal as Speaker. So Good made an enemy of both McCarthy and Trump. Not so good. Trump endorsed Good's challenger, State Senator John McGuire, by assuring Virginia voters that, unlike Bob Good, McGuire will never let you down. Yeah, he'll never let you down. Like if you're running for elective office and he throws his support behind someone like Ron DeSantis, who is even more fascistic than you are. Trump added that McGuire is much stronger than Good on the border. And by that, Trump means of the two candidates, McGuire's even more racist than Bob Good, when it comes to Hispanics. Then Trump added, McGuire will always defend your under siege Second Amendment. I should be so under siege as the Second Amendment. The Supreme Court last week essentially legalized machine guns. If the Second Amendment gets any more under siege, the stars and stripes on the American flag will be replaced by a bullseye. Well, with a little more than 62,000 votes cast, McGuire right now leads good by 327 votes. Counting was postponed on Wednesday in order to observe Juneteenth, which in this deep red congressional district is observed as a day of mourning. The New Republic reports with both Good and McGuire positioning themselves as hard right authoritarians. This race is a clash not about ideology, but rather over loyalty to Donald Trump and vengeance for Kevin McCarthy. Kevin McCarthy was forced to give up the gavel in October of last year. Not forced out by voters, not forced out by Democrats. Instead, he was forced out by members of his own caucus, furious that McCarthy betrayed core conservative principles by working with Democrats to pass a continuing resolution that kept the government open after October 1st. How dare he, said Republicans. How dare Kevin McCarthy keep the government open? That means veterans will get their medicine, slaughterhouses will get inspected, and the beacon atop our Statue of Liberty will continue to shine. How could Kevin McCarthy turn his back on core Republican values? Well, to this day, McCarthy has been consumed by blinding rage over the humiliation of going down in American history as the only speaker ever to get served walking papers by his own party during the middle of a congressional term. All Kevin McCarthy ever wanted was to become speaker, and it was taken away from him after 9 months. 9 months. You know, up until that, Republicans were never able to show proof that late-term abortions actually exist. But McCarthy's speakership was terminated. Sadly for McCarthy, he lacks the introspection to consider why he was so disliked by his own caucus, why he earned the reputation among his own people of being a compulsive liar. Instead of using this year's midlife crisis to alter his behavior by reframing how he views a life well lived, McCarthy has instead devoted his winter of discontent to avenge the Crazy Eight. Ah, yes, the Crazy Eight, a name he assigned to the 8 House Republicans who are the reason he's no longer Speaker. No longer Speaker, and no longer in Congress. They were the 8 Republicans who voted for him to vacate the chair. You might remember, after suffering this ignominious defeat, McCarthy lacked the humility to become a backbencher, and also ran. He couldn't stand the role of a has-been who nobody respected in the halls of Congress. Instead of rolling up his sleeve and doing the work of the people, he quit. He gave up his seat at the end of last year and walked away. Because McCarthy's political career was never about helping others. It was always about helping himself to power for the sake of power. In the end, what destroys so many of these Republican politicians is they never learn that power just for the sake of power is no power at all. If you want nothing but power, then when you get that power, it becomes all about keeping the power instead of using that power selflessly, playing to history by serving the people instead of yourself. That's not what McCarthy or the previous Republican Speaker, Paul Ryan and Eddie Munster lookalike, or John Boehner, Dennis Hastert, and Newt Gingrich ever understood. For them, for these Republican speakers, it was all about the gavel and nothing but the gavel, holding on to the gavel for as long as possible. Gingrich, Boehner, Ryan, and McCarthy were all consumed just by their power because that's all they stood for, themselves. And if you stand for nothing but yourself, you stand for nothing. In all fairness, of all the Republican speakers of the modern era, Dennis Hastert was the most successful. Dennis Hastert served the longest of any Republican speaker, 8 years as speaker, longer than any Republican speaker in the modern era. And Dennis Hastert, to his credit, exited gracefully, not consumed by his own party. He was instead defeated at the ballot box when Democrats took control of the House in 2007, when Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats won in 2006, in the 2006 midterms. Dennis Hastert ended up leaving Congress with his head held way up high, more so than any other Republican speaker. Dennis Hastert left Washington with his dignity completely intact. Of course, afterwards, he ended up serving several years in prison for child molestation. There is that.
Former House Speaker Dennis Hastert reported to federal prison. Hastert is serving time for breaking banking laws, a hush money case that subsequently revealed Hastert had molested boys when he was a high school coach.
But except for the fact that Dennis Hastert is a convicted serial child molester, of all the Republican speakers to hold the gavel, Hastert was the one who was able to keep his caucus together the longest without too much internal dissent. And since apparently it takes a child molester to keep House Republicans in line, this might actually bode well for Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz. He might have a future in the Republican Party if he doesn't go to jail. Instead, more about Matt Gaetz's problems in a few minutes. Kevin McCarthy is not that bright. In fact, he's often been called stupid, mostly by me. It's been said McCarthy's bad at math and can't count votes. He's basically a high school jock, a former football player in high school who turned to Republican politics because all he's ever been good at is bullying other bullies. Politics for Kevin McCarthy was not about helping others. It was about satisfying his competitive streak. For him, it's about winning. He likes to win. I don't know. Maybe winning is fulfilling. I wouldn't have any idea. I do know, however, that when McCarthy looks back at his career in politics, he won't be able to point out a bridge, a school, or a program that provides meals and homes for those less fortunate. He can't point to anything in his congressional district or any other place on the planet that he made better. Nobody's life was improved because Kevin McCarthy chose a life in government. All Kevin McCarthy can speak to is the gavel, which is no longer something he won. So now to him, that gavel signifies something he lost. He's incapable of showing gratitude. He can't say, well, at least I got to be speaker for 9 months. No, in Kevin McCarthy's mind, something that was owed to him got taken away. This is how entitled white male Republicans view the world. Well, of course, I'm the most deserving. I'm a white heterosexual male with no physical disabilities. How could you strip me of what is owed to me? The speakership. Again, people like Kevin McCarthy are the same white males who make it easier to cut funding for Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security by referring to those programs as entitlements. And why do they call them entitlements? Entitlements is a pejorative here in the United States. It's a bad word, entitlement. Article 1, Section 9, Clause 8 of the United States Constitution forbids titles of nobility. The word entitlement has its roots in the British aristocracy. So by using the word entitlements to describe programs that provide help to the elderly, our veterans, or those living near the poverty line, it suggests that the recipients are all members of the idle class, characters out of a P.G. Wodehouse novel, instead of hard-working, loyal Americans who served our country or maybe had a run of bad luck and need a step up to keep a roof over their heads and food on their tables. How dare you call Medicare, Medicaid, food stamps entitlements? There is nothing so obscene as a member of Congress who never served a day in the armed forces referring to disability housing grants for Vietnam veterans as quote-unquote entitlements. At the same time, these same Republicans wear the American flag lapel and talk about how much they support our troops, unless, of course, the troops need something. Kevin McCarthy, by virtue of his birthright, says he loves to compete. Well, sure he loves to compete because in America the field tilts his way. He thinks, he's convinced himself he likes to compete, but that's not competition. He's not competitive. He just likes to take what he thinks is owed to him. And now that he'll never be Speaker again, his need to take what is owed to him has turned into a heat-seeking missile of revenge. There is no other way for McCarthy to deal with this type of public humiliation. Kevin McCarthy doesn't read. He's developed no other interest or skills that would have prepared him for a life outside of politics. All Kevin McCarthy understands is never forget, never forgive. McCarthy left politics with a campaign war chest of close to $20 million. That's $20 million that we know of. Because campaign finance law is cloudy and rarely enforced, McCarthy can now wind down that war chest any way he wants. Most of it is in a super PAC that could easily be distributed to his wife and kids simply by putting them on salary. Although nobody has ever tested this, it's not necessarily illegal for Kevin McCarthy to use that vast war chest to buy himself a beautiful home. When it comes to how retired politicians use money in their super PAC, nobody is quite sure what is legal and what isn't. But we're pretty certain is they can pretty much get away with whatever they want. Rudy Giuliani hasn't been mayor of New York since 2001. He has an old super PAC from his presidential run of 2008, and he's depleted all that money to pay a small portion of his legal expenses. Is that legal? Is anything Rudy does legal? And we know that Donald Trump raised hundreds of millions of dollars for his Save America super PAC after he lost to Joe Biden. 100 million of that has been spent on lawyers, but nobody knows or seems to care where the rest of the hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars have gone. Well, actually, Special Counsel Jack Smith cares. He was thinking of prosecuting Trump for wire fraud, but that entire investigation is still on hold because 2 months after oral arguments on presidential immunity, our Supreme Court still can't decide if former presidents can be tried for murdering their political opponents. Seriously. During oral arguments before the Supreme Court, that issue apparently is subject to debate, and the court still hasn't handed down a ruling. Supposedly, they have until July 1st, and it looks like this court is going to wait until the very last minute to issue a ruling where they'll probably kick it down to the lower courts for clarification so that Donald Trump doesn't go on trial until after the election, assuming he loses, and never goes on trial, assuming he wins. And you know what? I've said this before. This is a good thing. The Supreme Court is doing Joe Biden a favor because right now, Donald Trump is slipping in the polls. And if there were any more trials before now and Election Day, Trump could once again play the victim card. Instead, he now has to run on the issues. And when this race is about what he promises voters the government will do for them, as opposed to discussing what the government is doing to Trump, he loses. So, instead of going quietly, Kevin McCarthy has spent the past couple of months plotting his revenge, launching primary challenges to get even with the Crazy Eight, challenging the Republicans who got him kicked out of office. Not because he disagrees with them on policy. Republicans have no policy. He's doing this because he wants revenge, which it turns out is Republican policy. This party is just about revenge. Revenge has become the cornerstone of Donald Trump's campaign. He's been saying Democrats are going to pay for what they're doing to him. Last week he said CEOs who refuse to endorse him need to be fired. Republicans who took way too much time coming around to endorsing him, like Virginia Congressman Bob Good, they need to be kicked to the curb. Not sure that's how you win elections, but he's going to try. Because the Republican Party is the party of aggrieved white men consumed by revenge. Revenge towards women who won't let them control their bodies. Revenge towards people of color who are stealing their jobs and culture. And McCarthy isn't even trying to pretend he's not getting even. Republicans respect him for getting even. His message is, you screwed me, so I'm going to take some of the money I raised for my super PAC and use it to satisfy my own bloodlust. And Republicans salute him for that. He's using some of his leftover war chest to take on the Crazy Eight who destroyed his political career. There's Ken Buck, who voted to oust McCarthy. Ken Buck is what is called a principled conservative who couldn't stomach the election deniers in his party, and he ended up quitting Congress altogether earlier this year. Lauren Boebert switched districts so she could run for his seat. Her primary is next Tuesday, so Buck is out, and there's really nothing McCarthy can do to get even with him. Matt Rosendale from Montana, congressman, Republican, voted to oust McCarthy. He was a member of the Crazy Eight. And Rosendale was all set this year to run for the Republican nomination for Senate to take on Democratic incumbent John Tester. But then, after he joined the Crazy Eight, rumors mysteriously surfaced about his having impregnated a 20-year-old woman who was working for him. He threatened to sue the source of that rumor. I don't know who it could be. But then he dropped the lawsuit, and then he dropped out of the race for Senate. And then he announced he would also not seek re-election for his House seat. He said he was leaving politics because of all the death threats and vicious gossip about his personal life. Who could have been behind that? I wonder. Well, I don't think McCarthy was behind the death threats. But as for the vicious gossip about Rosendale's love life, you decide. Then there's Eli Crane, who represents Arizona's 2nd Congressional District. He was a member of the Crazy Eight. His primary is scheduled for July 30th. In 2022, Kevin McCarthy's super PAC donated close to $1 million towards Crane's reelection. But then, in 2023, Eli Crane joined the Crazy Eight. So now McCarthy's super PAC, the American Prosperity Alliance, is supporting County Supervisor Jack Smith in this Republican primary, where Kevin McCarthy's super PAC is blanketing the airwaves with ads accusing Eli Crane of being weak on immigration. You see, immigration is the all-purpose cudgel for the Republican Party. McCarthy is saying, oh, no, I'm not supporting Crane's opponent to get even with Crane because he screwed me over and destroyed my life. No. Nothing could be further from the truth. Why would you say that? No, I'm supporting Eli Crane's opponent because Eli Crane is weak on immigration. How is he weak on immigration, you ask? Well, immigrants steal our jobs. Crane stole my job, so he's obviously an immigrant who's weak on immigration. Andy Biggs, like Eli Crane, is from Arizona. Biggs voted to unseat McCarthy. He's part of the Crazy Eight, but Biggs beat his Democratic opponent 2 years ago by nearly 20 percentage points. Biggs is in a deep red district in Arizona, so McCarthy isn't running any challengers. Plus, I think Andy Biggs is dangerous, and Kevin McCarthy is afraid of him. I met Andy Biggs. I think he's dangerous. Tim Burchett represents Tennessee's 2nd Congressional District. The night before the vote on whether McCarthy should be removed back in October of last year, Kevin McCarthy called Tim Burchett and asked for his support. Burchett said, I can't give you an answer. I'm still praying on it. And McCarthy began to laugh. McCarthy mocked the idea of Burchett asking Jesus for advice, and Burchett later said that is precisely why he voted against Kevin McCarthy. Burchett said, McCarthy mocked my religious beliefs. What's he supposed to do? Respect them? You're asking Jesus whether McCarthy should vacate the chair? Like Jesus would know or care? So Burchett joined the Crazy Eight. And right before leaving Congress, Kevin McCarthy got even with Burchett by sneaking up behind him while Burchett was giving an interview and punched him in the kidneys. I kidney you not. McCarthy, ever the football jock, denied that he punched Burchett in the kidneys. He said, believe me, if I was going to punch Burchett, he wouldn't have still been standing. That's your Republican Party. Toxic male masculinity. Kevin McCarthy wouldn't dare say punching somebody is wrong, that violence is an abomination. Instead, McCarthy says, me, big, strong, powerful man, and I could beat up Tim Burchett if I really wanted to. Burchett was reelected 2 years ago by more than 35 percentage points. Only an idiot would think of launching a primary challenge. One such idiot was Republican Jimmy Matlock. Jimmy Matlock the owner of Matlock Tire Service and Auto Repair in Lenore City, Tennessee. He's also a former Tennessee state representative. Jimmy Matlock announced he was thinking of running against Burchett, but then he said, and I'm not making this up, that he needed to pray on it. And then after he prayed on it, he decided not to run. You had Burchett praying on it. You got Jimmy Matlock praying on it. And, these Republicans, they pray on a lot of things. But when it comes to cutting Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and food stamps, they never seem to pray on that one. I think because they know what Jesus would tell them. So, McCarthy isn't funding any primary challenger for Tim Burchett. I guess the kidney punch will just have to suffice. That primary is August 1st. Nancy Mace of South Carolina voted against McCarthy. She's part of the Crazy Eight. So McCarthy spent millions trying to unseat her in the June 11th primary by promoting Catherine Templeton, who worked for Nikki Haley when she was governor. Templeton ended up losing to Mace by more than 25 percentage points. That was earlier this month. The millions that could have been spent to feed the hungry were instead spent to feed Kevin McCarthy's appetite for revenge, as though there would be any difference between Catherine Templeton and Nancy Mace. This is just the politics of personal destruction, which McCarthy now celebrates. He feels no shame about wasting millions to get even. He could feed the starving. It's more important to get even because you hurt me, I hurt you. Meanwhile, Nancy Mace could face a House Ethics Committee investigation after someone, we don't know who, filed an anonymous complaint charging her with abusing reimbursements given to House members for lodging when they're in Washington. Again, it was an anonymous complaint. We'll never know who was behind it. But the Ethics Committee is now looking into whether or not they should investigate Nancy Mace for ethics violations. I wonder who could have phoned in the anonymous tip. Since voting against McCarthy back in October, Nancy Mace has earned the reputation as the single most difficult member of the House to work for. Why? Well, she's a woman. So, of course, Republicans will describe her as irrational and prone to tantrums. In all fairness, the turnover in Nancy Mace's office has been excessive. I think it's a record. She's gone through more staffers than any House member. And as her staffers quit, they all seem to leak stories to the press about what an overbearing, opportunistic egomaniac Nancy Mace is. Wow. I wonder who would be behind that. Who could have encouraged her ex-staffers to tell us that there's actually a member of the House of Representatives who's an overbearing, opportunistic egomaniac? I mean, that's really unusual for somebody to be a congressperson and be an overbearing, opportunistic egomaniac. I wonder who would have encouraged ex-staffers to go public with that. And then there's Matt Gaetz. Nancy Mace is being investigated by the House Ethics Committee. She was Crazy Eight. And then there's Matt Gaetz, the leader of the Crazy Eight, the craziest of the Crazy Eight. Gaetz represents Florida's 1st congressional district. His primary, the Republican primary in Florida, is August 20, And Kevin McCarthy is spending another fortune pumping up Gaetz's Republican challenger, Aaron Dimmock, who has never held elective office, but he is a retired naval officer and aviator. And his platform is, I love Donald Trump more than Matt Gaetz. Gaetz won his 2022 primary with almost 70% of the vote. It's unlikely he's going to lose to Dimmock, but there has been a cloud of scandal hanging over Matt Gaetz involving sex, drugs, and possibly minors. So, Dimmock claims to love Trump, but Matt Gaetz is Trump. He talks to Trump all the time, and Dimmock is going to lose. A poll of Florida voters back in November showed more than half of Florida voters disapprove of Matt Gaetz's behavior. But that poll means nothing, especially since it gives him a positive approval rating where it counts with his constituents in the 1st District. Maybe Florida isn't voting for Gaetz, but his constituents in Florida are, and they like him. But Matt Gaetz's approval rating is incredibly low with Kevin McCarthy, who repeatedly says the only reason he's no longer Speaker is because Matt Gaetz had sex with a 17-year-old girl and then asked McCarthy to put an end to the House Ethics Committee investigation looking into it. I've played you the tapes. Kevin McCarthy can't wait to tell everybody that the reason he's not Speaker is because Matt Gaetz had sex with a 17-year-old girl and then asked McCarthy to put an end to the House Ethics Committee investigation looking into it. McCarthy has said that after he refused to block the investigation, Gaetz decided to lead the Crazy Eight by introducing the motion for McCarthy to vacate the chair. McCarthy has also said Matt Gaetz belongs in prison, unquote. McCarthy hates Matt Gaetz. After McCarthy was forced to vacate the chair and they were trying to nominate a new Speaker, there was a meeting in the Republican caucus, and it got very ugly. McCarthy ended up screaming at Matt Gaetz and came very close to punching him, probably in the kidneys. As you know, this was a bad week for Matt Gaetz. Information is leaking out of the House Ethics Committee about their investigation into allegations that Gaetz was involved not just in sex trafficking, but maybe trafficking underage girls. ABC News reports that this committee, the Ethics Committee, has expanded the scope of its investigation, speaking with several witnesses who said they have seen Venmo receipts proving Matt Gaetz paid several women to attend his parties in order to engage in sexual activity with his male guests. ABC News reports that the Ethics Committee has spoken with several women who are willing to come forward and say they were paid by Matt Gaetz to have sex with his male friends. Back in 2020, the Justice Department, the Trump Justice Department, began looking into these allegations against Matt Gaetz. These allegations go back 4 years. And in 2023, the Justice Department, under Joe Biden, decided not to prosecute. So the investigation into Matt Gaetz began under Bill Barr's Justice Department, and it was ended with no prosecution in 2023, last year, when Merrick Garland decided not to prosecute. And that did not sit well. When Merrick Garland decided not to prosecute Matt Gaetz, that did not sit well with attorneys for Matt Gaetz's close friend Joel Greenberg, a tax collector from Seminole County, Florida, who is now doing time for sex trafficking of a child. Greenberg's conviction all stemmed from that federal investigation looking into possible wrongdoing by Matt Gaetz, who is alleged to have conspired with Greenberg to bring women, possibly girls, to parties both in Florida and Washington, D.C., for the express purpose of having sex, allegedly with friends of Matt Gaetz. McCarthy, so you understand the timeline, became Speaker in January of 2023. You might remember he and Matt Gaetz almost came to blows during the 15 rounds it took in January of 2023 for Kevin McCarthy to finally win the gavel. Gaetz fought him every step of the way. Again, 2 years earlier, the House Ethics Committee in April of 2021 launched an investigation into allegations that Matt Gaetz had engaged in sexual misconduct, that he had shared pornographic videos on the House floor, misused campaign funds, and accepted bribes. But when it became apparent that the Justice Department was looking into this further, the committee backed off so as not to impede the Justice Department's investigation. Nancy Pelosi was Speaker at the time. But then, in September of 2022, prosecutors in the Biden Justice Department, looking into Gaetz, the prosecutors recommended that the Department of Justice drop the investigation. In February of 2023, a month after McCarthy became Speaker, the Department of Justice announced it would not prosecute Matt Gaetz. Okay, that was in February of 2023, a month after Kevin McCarthy became Speaker. There was one person, more than anybody else, who tried to block him from getting elected Speaker. That was Matt Gaetz. And in May of 2023, just about 4 months after Kevin McCarthy became Speaker of the new Congress, against Matt Gaetz's wishes, the House Ethics Committee reopened their investigation into Matt Gaetz. Again, they had closed the investigation 2 years earlier when the Department of Justice began investigating. The DOJ in February of 2023 says we're not prosecuting. McCarthy is the new Speaker, and the House miraculously reopens the investigation into Matt Gaetz, the House Ethics Committee. Okay, that happened in May of 2023. They reopen, the House Ethics Committee reopens the investigation into Matt Gaetz. That's May. By October of 2023, Kevin McCarthy is removed by the Crazy Eight. And who orchestrated his removal? Matt Gaetz. That ouster was led by Matt Gaetz. After McCarthy was removed, McCarthy said Gaetz came after him because Gaetz had asked him to get the Ethics Committee to close the investigation. Again, the House investigation into Gaetz had been closed once it was the Biden Justice Department. The investigation of the Justice Department began when Trump was president. It kicked into gear when Biden became president. So the ethics committee shut down their investigation, not to get in the way. This was when Pelosi was speaker. But in the spring of 2023, last year, after the DOJ decided not to prosecute, the House Ethics Committee, while McCarthy was the new speaker, the House Ethics Committee reopened the investigation. And remember, Matt Gaetz was Kevin McCarthy's enemy. Nobody fought harder in January of 23 during the 15 rounds it took to get Kevin McCarthy elected speaker. Nobody fought harder against McCarthy than Matt Gaetz. So, is it revenge? Did McCarthy order the House Ethics Committee to reopen the investigation out of revenge? I seriously doubt it. I seriously doubt it. I think the House Ethics Committee reopened it because Gaetz is a problem. And the Republicans figured, because he's from a deep red district in Florida, we can get rid of him and replace him with a Republican who won't be a problem. They could afford, and they still can afford, to get rid of Matt Gaetz, unlike my beloved George Santos, who Republicans got rid of, and then in a special election ended up losing that seat to Tom Suozzi, a Democrat. Gaetz, I believe, is dirty. I think there's a lot of dirt on him. I've heard things. I don't know if it's true. I've heard things. But he's no idiot. He may be one of the sharpest Republicans in the House. His father was president of the Florida Senate. And you learn how politics work when your dad is president of the Florida Senate, especially while you yourself are also serving in the Florida State House. Matt Gaetz learned from the best. It is my belief that Matt Gaetz went after McCarthy in October of 2023 with guns blazing because Gaetz knew the Ethics Committee had something on him. He knew that he had dodged a bullet when the DOJ decided not to charge him. I believe Gaetz's political calculus in going after McCarthy was, if I go after the speaker with full guns blazing, then this ethics investigation into my sex trafficking becomes politicized. I can claim the only reason the Ethics Committee is coming after me is because I made an enemy of Kevin McCarthy. This is an old trick. You mitigate criminal investigations or an Ethics Committee investigation by convincing everyone that it's political. This is political. Trump does it all the time, right? Anybody who attacks him is a Democrat. Even when they're Republicans. They're rhinos. They're Republicans. And you go after Trump, you're a Republican name only if you're a Republican. This is an old trick that Republicans have learned. It's not, especially from Trump. The mayor of Miami ran for the Republican nomination for president this year. Nobody knew who he was. He doesn't have a record to run on. But there's a cloud of corruption hanging over him. He may be prosecuted for working with real estate investors, taking possibly bribes. What do you do when there's a cloud of criminality hanging over you? You run for president, and then you accuse any prosecutor of politicizing, weaponizing the Justice Department. Back in 2016, Chris Christie ran for president. Because of Bridgegate, there was a cloud of corruption hanging over Christie. When you run for president, all of a sudden that cloud of corruption dissipates because the corruption now has been politicized. It's hard to go after a candidate for president because it looks like the Justice Department is being weaponized. When you run for office, or in Matt Gaetz's case, when you attack the speaker, as Gaetz did in October, you can blame the cloud of corruption hanging over you on politics as usual. That's why I think Matt Gaetz led the Crazy Eight. Did Kevin McCarthy order the Ethics Committee to reopen its investigation into Matt Gaetz to seek revenge for Gaetz trying to block McCarthy from winning the speakership in January? I sincerely doubt it. That Ethics Committee is controlled by Republicans, but the House Ethics Committee is the only standing congressional committee that's evenly divided. There are 5 members of the Republican Party and 5 members of the Democratic Party. That's how the Ethics Committee was set up. That's how it's structured. So if Kevin McCarthy, as Speaker, ordered the Ethics Committee to look into Matt Gaetz, there would be 5 Democrats on that committee who'd be screaming bloody hell. It would be really hard to keep it secret that Kevin McCarthy, as Speaker, was ordering the House Ethics Committee to go after Matt Gaetz out of revenge. The House Ethics Committee announced on Tuesday that its investigation into Matt Gaetz will be more expansive, with 25 subpoenas issued and dozens of witnesses already interviewed. The committee said they now have reason to believe that among Matt Gaetz's many violations, Gaetz may be guilty of obstructing their investigation. The committee announced Tuesday they might have reason to believe Gaetz engaged in sexual misconduct and illicit drug use, that he accepted improper gifts, dispensed special privileges and favors to individuals with whom Gaetz had sex with, and sought to obstruct government investigations into his conduct. The House Ethics Committee said it will not investigate allegations that Gaetz may have shared inappropriate images or videos on the House floor. Well, why would they have to investigate that? It's common knowledge that Gaetz did that. The committee said it will not look into allegations that Gaetz misused state identification records or that he converted campaign cash for personal use. They will not be investigating bribes. The House Ethics Committee is investigating drugs and sex trafficking. That's the focus of their investigation: drugs and sex trafficking. Matt Gaetz called the investigation Soviet-esque, as well as frivolous, and said the Ethics Committee would be better served looking into fellow Republicans' illegal inside trading of stocks. Well, it's not just Republicans who do that. Immediately after January 6, 2 members of the Crazy Eight, Andy Biggs of Arizona and Matt Gaetz of Florida, called over to the White House, reportedly, and asked Trump to issue them blanket pardons. Andy Biggs was up to his neck in the Stop the Steal movement and was worried that after the insurrection, he would face criminal prosecution. Trump didn't pardon Andy Biggs. Matt Gaetz was also part of the Stop the Steal movement, but the general consensus is his request for a blanket pardon was over the Department of Justice's investigation into his sex trafficking. Again, the investigation into Matt Gaetz's sex trafficking began in the Trump Justice Department, and Trump refused to give Matt Gaetz a pardon. Trump, however, did become much closer to Gaetz after Gaetz asked for the pardon. The two became very close after Gaetz asked for the pardon. Why? Why would Trump befriend Matt Gaetz? Because Gaetz apparently is filthy. It's the only way you can get close to Trump. A ticket inside Trump's inner sanctum is guaranteed when you have dirt. You have to have dirt. Then Trump can trust you. The fact that Matt Gaetz needed a pardon from Donald Trump made Gaetz incredibly useful to Donald Trump. Now, I've dedicated many episodes of this podcast going over the list of close male advisors to Donald Trump who have had run-ins with the law specifically over women, violence towards women. That is the key to success in Trump's orbit. He is, of course, an adjudicated rapist. So that's why Matt Gaetz and Donald Trump talk all the time. Now, it was Merrick Garland's Justice Department that refused to prosecute Matt Gaetz. Why? Because Garland was just about to appoint a special counsel to look into the criminal activities of Donald Trump. Garland had much bigger fish to fry, and he had to back off Gaetz because he couldn't let it look like he was trying to lock up the entire Republican Party, which he should. I mean, the entire Republican Party should be, it's a criminal enterprise. But there are just so many hours in the day and just so many prosecutors. There are just so many investigators. There are just so many FBI agents. There aren't enough to look into the entire Republican Party. Garland can't prosecute everyone. It would look bad, especially when you're going after Trump. So he demurred. Gaetz was free. The DOJ dropped it. Now, Matt Gaetz is a lawyer, and he's pretty sharp. The problem in America is we have too many lawyers figuring out ways to work around the law instead of enforcing it, which is why I believe the promise of the 14th Amendment, equal protection under the law, will never come to fruition until law schools at all public university are free of charge. The problem in America isn't too many lawyers. The problem is too many lawyers with massive student debt who are forced to pay it off by going to work for corporate law firms instead of for the public interest. We don't have enough good lawyers. If law school were free, there would be an army of lawyers entering politics, becoming public defenders, or going to work in Washington agencies for the people, not the corporate oligarchs. This is the mop-up for June 21st, 2024. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Thank you for finding me. June 21st, I think it's summer. Or if you're in Australia or New Zealand, you think it's the first day of winter. What are just unbelievable. I have Australian listeners. I have people from New Zealand, and they think, they love to say, oh, it's winter. I get it, Australia. You want to be different. I get it. Some countries drive on the other side of the road to escape America's cultural imperialism. I get it, and I get it. Australia and New Zealand call this time of year winter just so they get to feel different. But it's not winter. You just can't make something different by naming it something else. It's summer, Australia. Look out your window. The days are getting longer, the trees are filled with leaves, and everyone is complaining about how hot it is. That's called summer, Australia. Not winter, summer. How could you be this stupid? How could an entire continent be so stupid not to know that it's summer, not winter? Now, I've never visited Australia or New Zealand, but it sure feels like I need to go down there and straighten these people out. For the love of God, it's summer. Please hit the like button so I remain in your feed. And because my schedule is so erratic and self-destructive, make sure to hit the notifications bell so that you always know when I'm about to go live. I don't know how to hit the notifications bell. I don't even know where it is, which is why I never know when I'm about to go live. One of these days, I'm going to actually figure out how to do this show. I've been doing it now for 15 years. I have no idea how to do this show. If you would like a free transcript of today's episode, go to shopdavidfeldman.com and hit the transcripts menu. These transcripts are free. We have a couple of freebies there. You can get a free Harvard diploma. I'm selling a Harvard coffee mug. Harvard is Harverd. You have to pay for the mug, but you can get a free Harvard diploma over at shopdavidfeldman.com. We have a lot of freebies over there, the transcripts. And the transcripts are free, and the Harvard diploma is free because some of my listeners are generous enough to buy useless crap that I'm selling over at shopdavidfeldman.com. You know, the Trump fart filtration masks, Uncle Scam, the Uncle Scam mug. Now, I make some products over at shopdavidfeldman.com that I'm actually proud of. But the people who shop at my store don't buy the stuff I'm proud of. Like, nobody's buying the coffee mugshots of mugshots. This is Rudy Giuliani's mugshot, and I'm proud of this. It's clever. It's a mugshot on a coffee mug. It's a coffee mugshot. I think I sold one. Somebody actually bought this. This is like an idea that Kramer would have. Remember Kramer had a coffee table book of coffee tables? This is a coffee mug with mugshots. It's coffee mugshots. This is my get-rich-quick scheme. Like, I'm going to put Trump's mugshot on it and Steve Bannon's, and I'm going to get rich. But nobody's buying this. I'm proud of this. Nobody's buying it. They're not buying the T-shirt that says still a Democrat. I mean, look at this. Look at that. It's a broken heart, all bandaged up. I'm proud of this because it speaks to the existential struggle that all of us Democrats suffer from. Nobody bought it. I think I sold two. And it breaks my heart that nobody's buying this. My nephew, Leonard, wanted to be a Hollywood stuntman, but they wouldn't hire him because of his fear of heights. My sister asked me to take him in, so I hired Leonard to run my store. But somehow he thought I asked him to ruin my store, not run it. I gave Leonard my credit card, and I said, Leonard, go print up some T-shirts, coffee mugs, and sweatshirts that say David Feldman Show. I said, maybe some idiot listeners will pay for the privilege of becoming human billboards for my show. And now, thanks to Leonard, I have a warehouse filled with David Feldman Show mugs. I am lousy with David Feldman Show coffee mugs, David Feldman Show hoodies, David Feldman Show t-shirts, because Leonard thinks getting the spelling right on 2 out of 3 words means he deserves a cookie. And I asked my listeners, help a brother out. Buy a David Feldman Show coffee mug. I ask you to buy a Still a Democrat coffee mug with the broken heart, with, the bandages. I ask you to buy a Made in Los Estados Unidos coffee mug, which is smart, clever. It makes a powerful political point about something I care deeply about. But you don't buy the smart stuff. I mean, some of you did, but not really. A handful of you bought the merchandise that makes me proud, that makes me think, maybe I can become Martha Stewart or Gwyneth Paltrow and get into the lucrative world of lifestyle branding. Maybe I'll have my own tequila or pasta sauce. But my listeners, nah. They don't support my dream of becoming a well-respected entrepreneur. They don't want me to become a limousine liberal, big on social causes, so long as it doesn't affect my bottom line. They don't want me to become the guy who's all for unions until my employees organize. They don't want me to be the Hollywood asshole I always dreamed of becoming. The guy who says all the right things while making his children's nanny walk 3 miles up the hill to the bus stop in 100-degree heat. No, you won't let me be that kind of entrepreneur. Instead, you buy stuff that makes me ashamed to have a store. Do you know what my biggest seller is? This. This is my biggest seller. The chef apron that says, I hope you're in the mood for diarrhea. Some of you have bought more than one. There's a woman, I think, who's bought 3 or 4 of these. And you don't think I don't know what you're all up to? You don't think I don't know you're buying the I hope you're in the mood for diarrhea chef's apron? You don't think I don't know that you're buying this to destroy me? Or you think I'm an idiot? I know what's going on. You're turning this into an episode of The Twilight Zone where I finally get to be rich and successful because I'm known as the I hope you're in the mood for diarrhea guy. Hey, look, it's the I hope you're in the mood for diarrhea guy. Didn't you used to talk about free tuition at all public universities and how healthcare is a human right? I'm with my friends here. I'm trying to eat. Can you please leave me alone? I hope you're in the mood for diarrhea. Hey, it's the I hope you're in the mood for diarrhea guy. My second biggest seller, this one, the Donald Trump fart filtration masks. You see a pattern here? I think I'm building an audience of caring intellectuals who want to leave the world a better place than they found it. Instead, it turns out my audience is into chef aprons emblazoned with the word diarrhea and fart filtration masks. And worst of all, this hurts the most. I have a son, David Jr. He's my oldest son. His name is David Jr. He's not a kid anymore. And when he was growing up, I called him DJ, which is short for David Jr. So what did DJ do this year? He changed his name. But he didn't change the name that should be changed. He didn't get rid of Feldman. That would have made sense. You get rid of Feldman. I said to him, if you're going to change your name, get rid of Feldman. Who needs the aggravation? But no, DJ kept the Feldman. He dumped David. He got rid of David, and he took my middle name, which is Beauregard. Some of you might already know that my middle name is Beauregard. I'm named after my mother's father. His name wasn't Beauregard, but he always wished he owned slaves. So they called me Beauregard. So my middle name is Beauregard. And DJ, my oldest son, is no longer David Feldman Jr. He is now officially Beauregard Feldman. So I can no longer call him DJ anymore because he's no longer David Jr. It gets worse. Beauregard Feldman, formerly known as DJ, wants to be called BJ. Because he claims he's Beauregard Jr. And I said, you're not BJ, you're not Beauregard Jr. You can't take your father's middle name and call yourself BJ. You can be Beauregard, but there's no way you get to be called Beauregard Jr. because there's no Beauregard Sr. He said, I insist that you call me BJ. And I said, I know what you're doing. BJ is short for blowjob. And he pretended, I have no idea what you're talking about. He said, I want to be called BJ in honor of BJ Honeycutt, the Mike Farrell character from MASH. And I said, you've never seen MASH. You're just making crap up. You know full well you want to be called BJ because it's slang for blowjob. And he insisted, I have no idea what you're talking about, and that's offensive. He accused me, he said I was offensive. So I'm being gaslighted by Beauregard. And to make matters worse, Beauregard is a condescending prick. I don't know where he got it from. And he says my store is stupid. He says nothing there is funny. He says it's never going to take off. And he said, I can show you how to sell coffee mugs and actually make some money, boomer. And he said, this is what you do. This is a coffee mug. You'll make a lot of money. He said, get a picture of Socrates, put it on a coffee mug, and then have Socrates asking, quote, why do I pee out my penis but not poo out my punis? Why do I pee out my penis but not poo out my punis? It's a question that Socrates is asking. And I said to Beauregard, nobody is going to buy this. It's scatological. I've cultivated sophisticated listeners. And Beauregard said, do it, boomer. So, to prove Beauregard wrong, I did it. I took a picture of Socrates, put it on a coffee mug, and I have Socrates asking, quote, why do I pee out my penis but don't poo out my punis? My third biggest seller. This is my third biggest seller. Why do I pee out my penis but don't poo out my punis? I hate Beauregard. I hate my listeners. I hate my life. Next week is the big CNN debate. I'm hosting a watch party. I'll have more details on how you can join me. We're going to do it on Zoom. I'll have more details on Monday on how you can join me for the CNN watch party. I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak. Thank you to everybody in the chat room. Thank you to Bob for keeping the chat room civil. And I hope to meet the members of the chat room for our debate watch party. If you would like a transcript of today's episode or previous episodes, go to shopdavidfeldman.com. Thank you.